Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is finally time. It is time for us to do our first ever Q&A session over here on the channel. Before we get started, if you want to see me do more stuff like this, make sure you do one thing for me. Smash that like button. Oh, I guess you gotta do a few things for me. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so that you never miss an upload. Now we have a few different questions to answer for today's video, so we're just gonna kind of get started with the beginning. So the first question comes from Jeremy Burt 6864. Thank you for your question, Jeremy. He says, considering your universe is currently set in 2004, are you going to go through the whole Ruthless Aggression era and hypothetically stop at 2008, or are you going to continue through into the PG era? As you guys know, that's what a lot of you come to this channel for, is my Ruthless Aggression Universe mode. And when it comes to following the timeline into the PG era, I think it really just depends on where we're at when that time comes. I could say that I love the Ruthless Aggression era, so for me to move out of that might be a difficult thing for me to do. If anything, we might have the same feel, but we'll move into more stars from that era. But to answer your question, Jeremy, I don't know. It really depends on how I'm feeling at the time, but also what you guys think of the idea of moving past the Ruthless Aggression era onto there. My Ruthless Aggression Era Universe mode's been going on since 2K18. It started as a Let's Play series, and it has evolved into what you guys now see today. At the time of recording, we're going into arguably probably one of the biggest pay-per-views that I'm going to be putting together, which is SummerSlam. And the love on this series has been fantastic. So the last thing that I would want to do is move away from it when that's what you guys are all here for. So this next question comes from the official R-Rum. It says, what inspired you to start Universe Mode? Always appreciate the hard work you put into it. Well, thank you so much for the kind words. Really what inspired me to start Universe Mode is I always had this idea of how I would have liked the Ruthless Aggression era to look. And being that was my favorite era, that's where I wanted to start. But also, the inspiration was drawn from guys like Murph's YT13, Delzinski, and Goran Perkins. I used to always play through Universe Mode back at 2K14, and I always, even back then when I was just playing like a Superstar mode, like what you would see somebody like CM Pulse doing back in his day, I would always find myself wanting to find a way to set up my own storylines. So that's really where the inspiration to start Universe Mode came from, was from guys like Murph's YT13 and Delzinski. And when it comes to the era, I just went with the era that I thought was fantastic. It had a great roster. I loved the era myself. And at the time, there was nobody doing it. But on 2K18, I would always look it up on YouTube, seeing if there's any Ruthless Aggression Era Universe Modes out there. And I couldn't find anything. It was more or less what you would see today, which was rosters to set up your own Universe Mode, but no one was actually doing this. So I really wanted to kind of take my art and bring it over into this specific era. The next question comes from NR23. It says, out of curiosity, what made you choose the Ruthless Aggression Era time period for your personal Universe Mode? Keep up the great work. So it kind of goes back to what I just said. At the time that I decided to start making Universe Mode videos, I had tried the Modern Era Universe Mode and stuff like that, and I realized after that wasn't working, then I need to go back to the drawing board. I was always into watching the old school wrestling. Even nowadays, I will go back and watch Ruthless Aggression Era episodes of Raw more often than I'll watch the current product. That's just how I am at this point. If that answers your question, that's really why I decided the Ruthless Aggression Era. It's just at the time no one else was doing it, and I love the era. So this next question comes from Destination Gaming. It says, what's up, bro? Big fan of your channel. So here's my question for you. What was personally your favorite match to make, whether it was long-term setting up for WrestleMania or short-term? So I kind of have two answers for this question. In terms of one that's already been done, my favorite match, I would probably have to say, was, so I think what my favorite match is that I've put together so far in my Universe Mode is probably Triple H versus Randy Orton at Bad Blood in the Hell in a Cell. And there's a couple reasons why. One, the build-up had started from back in 2K18, so that story has been brewing for years at this point. But also the match itself, I put a lot of effort into making everything make sense, having it fit the storyline, and also the outcome of that match. I wasn't just looking at the match itself, I was looking how can I move forward from this match. And that's kind of where things started to click in my mind when I'm putting together my matches and storylines. I really need to think about what's next. Another one that I would have to say is probably the triple threat match between John Cena, Kane, and The Undertaker. That was a really fun match to put together. In storyline, John Cena was looking like he was just a paper champion because he only won the title due to a distraction by Kane. He only retained it due to a distraction by Kane. So on paper, it didn't look like John Cena deserved to be the WWE Championship in my universe mode. Where this storyline took off, I feel like it was with vengeance, because not only did John Cena finally get a pinfall victory over two massive superstars like Kane and The Undertaker, it also set John Cena up to look like he's not just a paper champion, and then moving forward as well, it began the rivalry with Kane and The Undertaker. So those were probably the two matches that I think I'm most proud of, is Triple H versus Randy Orton at Bad Blood, and then the triple threat match between John Cena, Undertaker, and Kane. And the main reason behind that is not the match itself, it's more or less a storyline that came out of each match and the storylines that went into the match. So I think that's one of my most proud work that I've done so far. The flip side to this question is the big stuff that I have planned. We got some great things planned for this universe mode. So my favorite storyline and my favorite matches, we're not even done with them yet. I would say we probably have two big storylines that I'm pushing in my universe mode. As time starts to unfold, you'll start realizing why these are going to be my favorite storylines, because now I'm not focusing on the small storylines themselves. I'm focusing on storylines that can shape my entire universe mode. I'm really excited to show you guys what I have in mind for this universe mode. It's going to get pretty freaking wild, and I would say it's probably already wild, but I know that was kind of a long-winded response. I hope that answered your question, but let's move on to the next one. So we got a question from Warrior Nation 5156. It says, would you still be having your universe mode set in Ruthless Aggression Era when you get to the year 2008 and then later on to the present? As I mentioned previously in one of the other questions, it really depends on how I feel at the time and how you guys feel. With the stuff that I have in play, though, I think we're more or less pushing towards just a fantasy universe mode. We're not going to be tied to a specific era, a specific roster. Next question comes from Top Gamer. Says, I know a lot of people say it's a dream match, but is Stain versus The Undertaker considered in your realm of possibilities for universe mode? And that's a fantastic question, because they are on completely separate brands at this point. As you guys know, we have a strict brand split in my universe mode. There's some times where I'll blur the lines, bringing guys in to, to push a feud. I'll bring people in, they'll invade the show, that kind of thing. But overall, it's a very strict brand split. Now, with that being said, Stain is on Raw, Taker is on SmackDown. They're both doing their own thing. They're both dealing with their own problems. But to answer the question, do I see that in the realm of possibilities? Absolutely. When will it happen? Is it set in stone that it will happen? No, it's not. It's not set in stone, but is it in the possibility? Is it an idea that I'm throwing around in my head? Absolutely. So next question comes from, and I apologize if I butcher this, it's Mina D. Johnson Music. I'm so sorry if I butchered that. Two questions. How do you find time to put together something like a universe mode? And if you watch modern day WWE, what are your thoughts on the bloodline right now, and where do you think they should take this story? So I'm going to start with the first question. It says, how do you find time to put together something like a universe mode? It is hard to find time. Now, you guys, as you guys probably know, or if you don't, it's great that this question was asked so I could tell you. I have a full-time job, and I have a fiance and a stepson, and obviously I have a family as well. So, needless to say, my life is very busy as it is. I do have the advantage of working from home, so sometimes I can make videos like this one from the comfort of my home during the workday. I could take a quick break to make it. But how do I find time to do it? I try to work out a schedule that not only works for me, but works for my family as well. Next question, if you watch the modern day WWE product, which I follow it, what are your thoughts on the bloodline right now, and where do you think they should take this story? I think they're doing a great job with the bloodline story, especially now that Roman has stepped away for a little while and Solo has kind of taken over almost as like the tribal chief. I think they're doing a great job bringing in a new version of the bloodline, a more aggressive version, less diplomatic, more aggressive. More like we're going to take over versus you're going to acknowledge this group. They're doing a great job with this. I think that they are going to bring the story back around full circle to where it's going to be Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga, and possibly The Rock versus Roman Reigns, Jimmy Uso, and Jey Uso. I think it's going to be the new bloodline versus the original bloodline. That's where I think they're going to take the story. That's the way it feels to me. It's hard to tell if that's the way that they're going to go, but from my perspective, I think Solo is reporting to The Rock, and that's why Paul Heyman was thrown so off by this new takeover of the bloodline. So to answer your question, that's where I think the storyline is going to go, but one thing that I've said with the bloodline story is just sit back, watch, and enjoy it, because you have no idea where they're going to take this storyline. Every time you think it's going one way, they typically will just throw you a curveball, and what we saw at WrestleMania, and I was there live to see it, which was absolutely phenomenal. The fall of the bloodline completely. It was one of the best story arcs I've ever seen. And the fact that WWE is bringing in these massive story arcs that could take years and years to really get to the pivotal point and before turning a new direction, I think it's a great job. I think they're doing a great job, the WWE is, on that part. From a creative aspect, I think WWE is in the best condition that it's ever been. And that's not me gaslighting. That's my honest feeling. A lot of the storylines that they're doing, it feels real. It feels different. It's something that you wouldn't expect in this time in WWE. So I tend to do these long-winded responses. I apologize, but I think that answered your question. If it didn't, let me know and I'll try to answer it at another time. Next question comes from Vaz526. He says, first, I want to say that you're my favorite when it comes to any and every 2K Universe Mode creator. Love you, Vaz. You're a great guy, great friend. Glad that you're a supporter of the channel. He says, second, what would you say is the biggest thing you've learned after being a Universe Mode creator for this long that has helped you improve your work more than anything else? There's a few things that I've learned. One of the big things is don't be afraid to try new things. Book what you want to book is really the biggest thing that I've learned. Book what you want to see. Because if you're going in and booking what other people want to see and you don't have passion in it, it's going to come across in your video, and I think that's very clear. You guys could tell that a lot of the storylines that I'm booking I'm very passionate about because of the way I'm invested in the matches, invested in the segments, that kind of thing. You could just tell. It comes across in the videos. So that's one thing that I've learned. Another thing that I learned from Murph's when he was doing his Booking Your Universe Mode series, kind of like a behind the scenes, was take your time. Don't rush it. I mean, when it comes to, for instance, the Randy Orton Evolution storyline, Randy Orton and Triple H are the main two that are feuding in that storyline. And that storyline isn't done yet. We're not done with the Evolution versus Randy Orton story. But the main two that are feuding, they've only faced one time in my Universe Mode. And that was in the Hell in a Cell match. But because there was so much in the story that I didn't have to do any other matches between them, just makes it all the more worth it to me. So that was a big thing that I learned from Murphs, was don't rush it. From Delzinski, I learned don't be afraid to try a new idea for a storyline. For instance, his NWO taking over the WWE storyline, completely out of the box for what you think you would have seen in WWE at the time. But it turned out to be a great story. And that's kind of what we're doing over here. We're taking ideas that you wouldn't have seen in the Ruthless Aggression Era, but we're going to try it anyways. Yeah, the biggest things that I learned are take your time, be invested in your own story, and book what you want to see. You know, so those are the things that I think I've learned the most from being a Universe Mode creator. And again, just what I've said in the past, don't rush it because it's going to come across in your footage. Next question comes from EnardZL. He says, just wanted to ask what made you decide to include TNA wrestlers in a Universe Mode instead of just WWE wrestlers? So that's a really good question. And the reason why I decided to bring in some TNA guys was, and this is where I think we've kind of gone outside the realm of being a Ruthless Aggression Era Universe Mode at this point, because we're no longer just focusing on this strict roster. And I felt like when I was doing that, it was hindering my ability to be creative with the storylines. Take, for instance, the AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, and Frankie Kazarian. None of those guys were in WWE at this time. AJ had a tryout match back in like 2001, but he was never brought in. So that's when this Universe Mode series has turned into a What If series. And that's really what gave me the inspiration to bring in TNA guys, because these guys were wrestling at the time, but they weren't in WWE. But what if they were? What could you do with them to bring them into WWE in a prominent role? So that's where this has become more than just a Ruthless Aggression Era Universe Mode. It has become a What If style type of Universe Mode series. I've gotten some kickback from the community in recent years because I'm not brand strict, but to answer the question, that's why I'm not. Because we're not just the Ruthless Aggression Era Universe Mode anymore. This is a what if these guys were here during the Ruthless Aggression Era? What if this superstar was in a prominent role in WWE during the Ruthless Aggression Era? What would that look like? And that's where the storylines come in for me. I'll take, for instance, someone like Shelton Benjamin. He got pushed over to Monday Night Raw during the draft, and then what happened with him? Intercontinental Champion, great in the ring. Was he in a prominent role? I'd say no, he wasn't. So now give him a reason to be in a prominent role. Pair him with somebody like maybe the guy that taught him, Kurt Angle. do a full team angle storyline like we're doing in my universe mode. Instead of just splitting these teams up, give them a reason. Give them a reason to split up. Look at what I did with X-Pac. X-Pac cost D-Generation X the World Tag Titles at King of the Ring. What was his reasoning? Because he was always looked at as a third member. He was never in a prominent role for DX. The prominent roles were Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, or Triple H and Shawn Michaels, and then Road Dogg, Billy Gunn. X-Pac was the outlier. He was there. Look at him in the NWO. Same thing. He was the outlier. Nobody really paid attention to him. So, split him up, but give him a reason to do it. Don't just split them. So that's kind of why I did what I've done in my universe mode. It's because we're not in the strict Ruthless Aggression Era anymore. I wanted to bring in more of a fantasy booking style to this, which is why you're going to see guys like AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan, Seth Rollins. I've gotten a lot of hate on Seth Rollins for being in my universe mode for the time, but let me tell you, he's been a great person to have in the role that he has had. Due to your guys' reaction, I have thought about writing him off just to get him out of my universe mode. But he's in such a prominent role on SmackDown right now, going after Evolution on Raw. Like, Seth Rollins he's a SmackDown superstar, but after winning the Owen Hart tournament, now he's over on Raw going after Evolution. The original plan was to just split him from Evolution, to go back to the storyline, where it was just Triple H, Batista, Randy Orton, and Ric Flair. That was the main plan. That's why Seth went to SmackDown. But then people started saying, well, why didn't Triple H get Seth brought back over to Raw? Good question. Let's play that storyline out. Let's see where it goes. And now here we are. Seth Rollins going after Batista for the Intercontinental title at SummerSlam. And Triple H is getting involved in Batista's business. Batista's getting upset. Ric Flair is just being Ric Flair. You don't have to have somebody like Ric Flair do much because he's Ric Flair. But that's the whole point of, that's why I didn't stick to just a Ruthless Aggression Era, because I never wanted to do that. I wanted to start that way, absolutely. I always planned on bringing fantasy elements into this universe mode. So I hope that answers your question. Again, long-winded responses. I'm going to try to cut this up as much as I can, but thank you for the question. Next question comes from Georgie Dimitrio. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. I'm sorry if I didn't. It says, how old were you when you started watching wrestling, and who was your favorite wrestler then? So that's a great question. I started watching wrestling basically from the day I was born. It's been in my life for years. I had buckets full of wrestling figures. So I've been a fan for as long as I've been alive. In terms of what I remember watching, it was probably about the 2005 to 2006 and on. Before that, I was too young. Everything's kind of a blur. My favorite wrestler was Jeff Hardy when I was younger, and Jeff Hardy and The Undertaker. Around the time I was in high school, I wasn't watching wrestling actively, but I paid attention to it, and I've gone on record to say this. You can hate it if you want. My favorite wrestler to this day is still John Cena, and the biggest reason is he didn't just give me inspiration inside the WWE business. He gave me inspiration outside of the industry of professional wrestling. He gave me the inspiration to get into lifting, to take that seriously. He gave me the inspiration to take chances on myself, which is what I did when I started my YouTube channel. So a lot of the inspiration that I have is drawn from John Cena, which is why he still to this day is my favorite wrestler. Next question comes from Michael, or Jesse Michael. It says, have you ever considered having a modern day universe mode? Great question. If you go back to 2K17 and 2K16, I did have a modern day, for the time frame at least. I did have a modern day universe mode from that period. But my problem with having a modern day universe mode is everybody's doing it. It's very hard to stick out in that. When it comes to what I'm doing now, it's wow. Like, you look up Ruthless Aggression Era universe mode, you're not going to see a lot of content creators out there for that. Not content creators that have been doing it since 2K18. So have I considered going back to a modern universe mode? I consider that quite often, but then I just think, what is that going to do for me? What's it going to do for my community? Because you guys are already watching that. A lot of the people that watch my universe mode content, they're watching guys like NR23, Lions Games, Expert Gaming, Cold Train Productions. Those guys are all doing more of a modern style universe mode. So let's be the outlier. Let's do something different. So I think we're on the last question, and it's from Georgie as well. It says, what do you think of Chris Benoit as a wrestler, not as the actual person? So that is a very good and a very difficult question to answer, because it can land you in hot water very quickly. So I'm going to try to answer this the best I can. As a wrestler, one of the best to do it. 100%. I've gone back to watch Benoit matches. He could have a match with a broomstick and make it a 5-star. He was just one of those guys that was very serious about what he did and was very good at what he did. And when you're talking about the Ruthless Aggression Era in WWE, you can't talk about it and not somehow mention Benoit. I mean, if you look back at the WrestleMania 20, that moment between him and Eddie Guerrero, no matter how much you want to write it off, no matter how much you want to pretend it didn't happen, no matter how much WWE would like to pretend it didn't happen, it happened. You can't get rid of that. As a person, cannot stand him. Cannot stand him at all. What he did to his family, there's no words that could say just how sickening that is. Absolutely, like, to get serious for a moment, there's nothing that you could say to make up for what that is. You could say it was untreated concussions, it was steroids. No, there's nothing can make up for what he did outside of that ring. So, as a wrestler, Chris Benoit, Paul Heyman said it best. One of the best to ever do it. Outside the ring, as a person, he can go f*** himself. That's my thought process on Chris Benoit. So I think that's all the questions that we had for this. If you do have any more, I can answer those in the comment section. Just feel free to drop them down below. Again, this was very new to me, so I hope that you guys enjoy this video. I will be paying attention to the feedback on this. If you guys want to see more videos like this, make sure you let me know down in the comment section. Again, if you have any other questions, I would be more than happy to answer those. But until next time, thank you all so much for stopping by. I'll see you guys later. See ya!